Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Covanta's Camden facility public hearing. My name is Lee Hoffman, and I'll be setting the ground rules for this evening, which you can see on this slide. So the important thing to remember is that this is a public hearing, and we want it to be as productive a meeting as possible. This meeting is being recorded. It'll be shared with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and become part of the official record for this project. We're going to start the meeting off by having Covanta make a brief presentation about the waste-to-energy facility and Covanta's Green Initiative project, along with the Title V air permit and the solid waste permit modification applications, as well as the Title V air permit renewal application. During the presentation, all of the participants will be muted, and you will be able to submit questions via the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen or by raising your hand. At the conclusion of Covanta's presentation, we'll call upon the commenters, and they will be unmuted so that they can make oral presentations themselves on the Zoom platform. Or if they've submitted questions in the Q&A feature, I'll read those questions and get someone from Covanta to answer. So however you wish to convey your information to Covanta, you can. Attendees are going to be asked to state their name, address, and affiliation for the record prior to giving their comment or question, and you will have 3 minutes or so for each attendee. That way we can make sure that everybody has time to ask their questions or provide for their comments. If you have written comments, as you can see, they can be provided to Camden Public Comments at covanta.com. That address is up there now, and we'll also leave that address up at the end of the presentation so that you know that you can see it. Once you're done with your comments and questions, we'll remute the microphone while we answer the question. And if you run out of time, again, just a reminder that you can submit additional written questions. Your time is your time. You cannot share it with others or give it over to somebody else. It's only your time. And we also don't have the ability to share video screens, so we are taking spoken and written comments only. And it should go without saying that we want this to be a productive meeting, so we want only appropriate behavior here. If anybody expresses inappropriate or threatening commentary, we will issue a warning, and if the behavior continues, the commenter will be disconnected from the webinar. Obviously, we don't expect that to happen. And with that, by way of the ground rules, I'd like to turn things over to Jack Bernardino from Covanta.
All right, thank you, Lee. And good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Bernardino. I'm the area manager for Covanta, New Jersey. And I just want to welcome everyone to our Covanta Camden public hearing. And I really appreciate everyone taking some time out of the schedule to spend some time with us this evening. We're eager to share our presentation with you, and we hope you find it helpful, and you'll see why we're enthusiastic about this project. So tonight's agenda, we're going to start with a purpose of why we're having the meeting. Then we'll talk about the Covanta Camden facility performance. Then we'll talk about the Camden Green Initiative project, the CGI project. And remember that this presentation that you're seeing tonight will be on this website, info.covanta.com/CGI. We will also go over our Covanta Camden Community Outreach and Environmental Justice. And then we will finish up with questions from the attendees. All right, let's go to the purpose of the meeting. So on September 20th, 2021, NJDP Commissioner Sean Latourette signed Administrative Order 2021-25, outlining the DEP's expectations for applications expected to be subject to the Environmental Justice Act upon adoption of implementing regulations. This public hearing, which we're in right now, is being held pursuant to AL 25 to allow for constructive communication between the applicant, Covanta Camden, and the local community. Talk about the project summary next. So this project is Covanta Camden's permitted waste-to-energy facility which combusts municipal solid waste or household garbage to produce renewable electricity. The following changes are proposed. So first, it's an upgrade to our air quality control system, which is a $60 million investment. It includes the installation of state-of-the-art fabric filter bag houses, the installation of a dry recirculating ash system, which has higher efficiency of acid gas removal, will be enhancing our existing selective non-catalytic reduction system, or SNCR system, for NOx control. Second proposal of this project is to pay for the upgrades I just mentioned, is to receive and process liquid waste. Let's talk about our permits next. All right, we are seeking the following two things. We want to modify the Title V operating permit and the solid waste operating permit to include the air quality control upgrades I just mentioned and the receipt and processing liquid waste. And note that we have already submitted on July 8th the minor modification of the Title V permit to DEP, and we already submitted the significant modification of the solid waste permit on October 10th. We're also looking to renew our 5-year Title V permit. We did submit the renewal application to DEP on June 13th, 2018, and that application was deemed administratively complete on June 21st, 2018. So right now, DEP is reviewing the permit modification renewal, and they're expected to render a decision after a technical review and receiving the comments from the public. Let's talk about the comment process. Again, keep in mind, the permit modification, renewal applications, existing permits, all can be seen at www.covanta.com/Camden. The comments for this public hearing are due by January 7th, 2023, and the comments can be provided in two ways. The first by email by Camden public comments at covanta.com, and the second way is by mail to the address below. Attention, Grizel Rivera. All right, so next I'm going to pass the presentation to Jyoti Agarwal, our Director of Environmental Permitting.
Thank you, Jack. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to speak with you about the Camden Green Initiative. This is going to dramatically reduce air emissions from the Covanta Camden facility. And this is really important because how we manage our waste has an impact on the health of our people and our planet, especially our children. So on this slide, you see the waste hierarchy. And each of these triangles is proposed by a different agency. To the left is the US EPA, the center is United Nations, and the European Commission. And they rank how waste should be managed. Now, all three agencies agree that reducing waste is the most preferred option, followed by recycling, then energy recovery, which is also called waste to energy, and the least preferred method is treatment and landfill disposal. Now, note that all types of waste management solutions will have an environmental impact, whether we compost or recycle or send material to waste to energy or send it to a landfill. The goal is really to move the waste upwards from the bottom, which is the least preferred option, to the top, which is the most preferred option. Now, on the next slide, you can see that as a nation, we landfill 64% of the total waste. This means we send roughly 250 million tons to the landfill. This is the equivalent of filling 106 Lincoln Financial Field stadiums with trash. Now, in the second circle, you can see that Camden County sends less waste to landfills and processes more trash through waste to energy. This is moving closer to what Europe is doing, and you can see Germany is landfilling only about 1% of its waste. So the key point here is that while the US has a lot of room for improvement, Camden County is already a leader in moving waste up the hierarchy. On the next slide, let's understand why waste to energy is preferred. So I'll walk through the landfills first. Landfills are not a very good use of our lands, and metals and other materials that get buried there are lost forever. Here, the waste also slowly breaks down in the absence of oxygen. It generates leachate. These are liquids from the waste that break down in the landfill, and they can contaminate groundwater. Landfills are also a major source of man-made methane gas, and this gas is a greenhouse gas, which is bad for the climate. It can warm the planet 84 times more than carbon dioxide, which means that the more methane is in the atmosphere, the hotter the planet gets. And on the other hand, waste to energy is an engineered and a controlled process that has a reduced impact from waste processing. It reduces the volume of the waste material by 90%. It recovers metals for recycling. And our facilities operate 24/7, which means they're generating continuous power and can feed the electric grid. So 1 ton of waste generates about 550 kilowatt hours of energy. How much is that? About a small car weighs about 1.5 tons. So that much trash can generate enough energy to power one home for 1 month. Now, waste-to-energy facilities benefit the climate crisis by avoiding greenhouse gas emissions. And for every ton of waste diverted from a landfill to a waste-to-energy facility, we avoid putting a ton of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. On the next slide, you can see that the US EPA during President Obama's administration and others acknowledged that waste-to-energy should be considered if our global goal is to reduce greenhouse gases. So I have 3 takeaways for you. One is that all waste creates an impact, and we must do all we can to reduce, reuse, recycle, and landfill as little as possible. 2, Camden is way ahead of other communities in our country. And 3, we can all do more to reduce the impacts of waste with projects like the Camden Green Initiative. With that, I'll hand it over to Todd Frace to describe more about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Todd Frace, and I am the facility manager for the Camden Covanta facility. If we go to the next slide, I just want to do a brief overview of the facility. The plant was opened in 1991, and Covanta took over the operations about 10 years ago. We currently process just over 400,000 tons of municipal solid waste, or trash, every year. That equates to 400,000 tons equates to filling 289 football fields with 1 foot high of trash. The plant operates 24/7, producing 21 megawatts of electricity, which is enough to power 15,000 homes, or roughly 6% of the households in Camden. We also recover 15,800 tons of metal, which is enough to recycle 13,000 cars. Now, as Jyoti mentioned, when you deal with waste, there's no easy solution to deal with waste that doesn't have an impact on the environment. This slide and the associated circle graph shows the percentage and sources of the air pollution in our local airshed. And we wanted to share this to show what percentage of pollutants may come from our facility. We have 3 graphs on here, starting on the left-hand side: nitrogen oxide, or NOx, particulate matter, PM10, which is very fine particulate, less than 10 microns, and volatile organic compounds, which are solvents. If we just look at the nitrogen oxide circle graph, you can see that in the local airshed, 2.2% of all the NOx emissions, or the NOx, come from the Covanta Camden facility. On the PM10, we're about 0.6 and less than 0.1% on the volatile organic compounds. So Covanta is not the lean polluter in Camden County, but we do acknowledge that we contribute to the air quality. And we do acknowledge that in the environmental justice community, there are a lot of stressors, including air quality, which is why we're embarking on this project to reduce our air emissions. As part of our environmental justice policy, we also want to have transparent operations. This is why on the next slide, we post our daily emissions on our website every day. I'm not going to go in detail about this slide, but I just want everybody to know, if you go to the website stated below, you can see how our performance was the day before, as we strive to have more transparent operations with our residents here in the city of Camden. So next, I want to move on and talk about the project. And if we can skip to the next page, we're going to talk about the Green Initiative. And Jack previously mentioned this. First and foremost, what this is going to do is not have a significant emission reduction. And we're going to do that by the installation of a state-of-the-art fabric filter bag house as part of a $60 million investment, the installation of a recirculating acid system, which is going to result in higher efficiency of our acid gas removal, enhance our selected non-catalytic reduction system, develop the ability to receive and process liquid waste, and develop a community benefit agreement. And we're going to go over these at a high-level technical view, just to give you a brief explanation of what these are before we get into the question and answer period. So before we go with that, we want to go to the next slide. We really want to talk about what is waste to energy. So on waste to energy, basically we take non-hazardous waste that was otherwise destined for a landfill, trash. We combust that trash to generate heat. The heat in turn heats up water to produce high pressure, high temperature steam to turn a steam turbine to produce electricity. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail on this slide. However, I wanted to point out two things. On the far left-hand side, you'll see the tipping floor where the trucks come in and dump. One of the things I wanted to note with the tipping floor is under a negative pressure, and that is what controls the odor at the facility. The other thing to really point out is in the middle to the right-hand side, you see a semi-dry scrubber in the bag house. The Covanta Camden plant currently does not have a bag house. We have an electrostatic precipitator, which uses an electrostatic charge and different potential to remove dust. It was probably state-of-the-art equipment when the plant was first built, but there are much better technologies out there now, including the bag house, which is a cornerstone of the Camden Green Initiative. To go to the next slide, we really want to talk about some of the specifics of the Camden Green Initiative. This picture is the engineering drawing of what we will be installing in Camden. It's a fabric filter bag house with a semi-dry recirculating fly ash system. I can tell you, I am very, very excited about this system, especially about the recirculating fly ash system. All new waste energy plants being built across the world are being built with a recirculating fly ash system. However, this will be the first plant in Covanta, and I believe the first plant in North America that will be retrofitted with this technology. And it's really great to bring this technology here to Camden. You can follow the flow path by following the blue numbers on the side. Go back one screen yet, by following the blue numbers on the side. But there are really two things I wanted to point out. First, why is the recirculating of fly ash so great? You can see on the blue box number 2 is where we add our reagents. We have a conditioning rotor, and then after the ash comes back through the bag house through number 5, we recirculate the particles back through the system. This gives a longer retention time, allowing our reagent to act for a longer time and drive down emission, particularly heavy metals such as lead. The other item to note is the flat bag filter bag house with a broken bag detector. The broken bag detector is relatively newer technology, and it's a very sensitive instrument that identifies any increase in particulate loading. This provides us with advanced warning of potential bag house issues and allows us to fix those issues much sooner than what we may have seen them with the traditional passing monitors and CM equipment. So what is a fabric filter bag house? On the next slide, we're just going to briefly go over what a fabric filter bag house is. A bag house is a device that removes particulate dust. It operates like a very efficient vacuum cleaner. If you think of a vacuum cleaner, it has a fan that pulls the air in, and the dirty air goes into a bag where the bag removes the dust particles and the clean air is exhausted. A bag house industrial bag house works on the very same principle, except it's much bigger. Covanta will install one bag house per boiler, with each unit consisting of 600 10-foot long bags. One of the arrangements that I really wanted to point out was the flat bag filter arrangement. And you may be wondering, well, why is the flat bag so important? This is actually key for our installation. Most bag houses come with a round bag, a standard round bag. The flat bag filter arrangement from Lure Filter, it actually provides much more surface area for the given amount of space. Thus, we were able to fit a more efficient bag house within the footprint of our existing plant. So now I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about nitrogen oxide control on the next slide. So the Camden facility is equipped with a selective non-catalytic reduction system that was installed in 2011. An SNCR system, it utilizes ammonia that mixed with water and sprayed into the boiler. The ammonia will react and break down the nitrogen oxide into nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and water. The drawing on the right shows a typical system, which is much like the system we have at our facility. We are looking to upgrade our facility using advanced control feedback from both our continuous emission monitoring system and from more temperature monitoring systems. The other thing we're proposing to do is to use the use of liquid water for the carrier water within our SNCR system. This will reduce our potable water in the SNCR system by over 50%. Of the liquid waste that we're looking to process, a lot of it is water that is used for tank rinses, washing, stuff like that. And as you can imagine, it may have some type of clean agent, and a lot of clean agents have some trace amount of ammonia. So it only makes sense for us to use this water in our SNCR system, which may help cut back on some of our reagent usage. With this, we are proposing a lower mass emission limit for NOx. Now, on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about emissions and where our emissions is going with this project. This graph may be difficult to read, but if you look at the graph on the right, up at the top, you have the federal standards and you have the dotted line. And what we're trying to show here is that we currently operate well below our limits. The gray bars on the bottom are where we are at currently with our emission based on the federal standards. And you can see such as dioxin and mercury were 95 and 86% below the federal standards. For lead, we're 74%, and you can look at the graph on through. That we acknowledge that some of our requirements, given by state and local requirements, have lower emission levels. However, we are still operating below them permits. So where are we going with the Camden Green Initiative as far as emissions? The next slide really showed the impact of our Camden Green Initiative project. This slide showed the reduction in emissions that we expect upon completion of the project. As you can see, with our semi-dry recirculation system, we expect that we're going to reduce lead from our current values by 95%, cadmium and mercury by 90 and 80% respectively. We'll also be lowering dioxins and furans by 70%, and we look to take our acid gases down anywhere from 45 to 60%, and we're going to lower NOx by 5%, which will bring us in line with the Ozone Transport Commission recommendations. So we want to talk a little bit now about the liquid material management system that we are proposing to install. How does Covanta handle liquids? So the liquid that we are proposing to process our facility are non-hazardous liquids that are handled in an environmentally sound manner by directly spraying the liquid into the combustion zone of the boiler using our existing SCCR system. The liquids, if you go to number 2, will be stored in 2 storage tanks located inside the tipping floor building. And remember, we are concerned, or the residents were concerned about odor, so we put these tanks in the building where they'll be under a negative pressure to control any odor. If you go to number 3, Covanta regularly processed liquids at our Niagara, New York plant and our Indianapolis plant. We also had processed these liquids at our Warren County, New Jersey plant for a combined total of 34 years. I personally have experience with handling these liquid waste at the Warren County plant for a number of years. And if we talk about the types of liquids, again, these are non-hazardous liquids. They're typically at least 95% water. Normally, they're much more concentrated water. And they're used as processed wash water in pharmaceutical, food, and other industries or manufacturer operations. We're going to get into more detail of what these liquids are on the next slide. You can go to the next slide, please. So here are some examples of the liquids that we are proposing to process at Covanta. The typical liquids are from tank rinsers and line flushes from varied manufacturer and industrial applications. These may be food and beverage application, adhesive, coatings, latex paint, vitamins and minerals, manufacturing facilities, and pharmaceutical and biotechnology plant. We showed a little example of the type of liquids here. For instance, if you use some latex paint to paint and you were rinsing your paintbrush after paint, that water that's going down the drain there at a manufacturing facility would be collected, and that would be some of the liquid waste that we would be looking to process. There are liquids that we do not want to accept and we will not process our facility. These include any of the landfill leachate that may be collected from the rain and runoff at the landfills. We do not want to process any grease trap cleanout or used oil. We will not process pesticide, insecticides, septic tank cleanout, or sewage sludge. Nor will we are looking to process any liquid that may contain PFAS materials in there. PFAS are the forever chemicals. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we determine what we will and won't process. So we have a rigorous 2-step approval process that we follow. The Covanta environmental engineer reviewed the data and our laboratory analysts submitted by the waste generator on the liquid stream. Once it passed all their tests and they approve it, then the final approval will lay with all the specifics at the Camden facility. So the Camden plant will have the final approval on any waste that we process. On the annual basis, the waste generator will certify with Covanta that the process has not changed and submit additional data and laboratory analysis that we required. When the liquid come to the plant, the liquids are sampled upon arrival prior to accepted. The unloading area is indoors and surrounded by concrete berms and spill containments. The liquid will be unloaded onto a storage tank filled with carbon filters and high-level monitoring, and again, inside the tipping floor to minimize odor with the negative pressure of the tipping floor building. The noise will be minimized due to the ongoing area being indoors. We're looking to process a nominal 4 gallon per minute per boiler, which equates to about 25,000 tons per year. This will equal approximately 6 to 8 trucks a day of deliveries, Monday through Friday, when the system is at full operating condition. And we will not process any liquids until we have the bag house installed. So with that, I'd like to turn over the next slide to Jack, and he will answer some of the frequently asked questions that we got asked about this project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Todd. So we've been talking to a lot of folks about this project for almost a couple of years now. So we really compiled a good list of questions that have been asked, or frequently asked questions, even pertinent questions. So I'll start with the one on the left. Will processed liquids increase truck traffic? So as Todd had mentioned, truck traffic will not increase due to liquids because basically the liquid trucks will displace garbage trucks. All right. However, the project itself will have some operational efficiencies. So the overall truck traffic will increase by about 1 truck per hour for current levels. But keep in mind that we'll still be within the confines of our permit for processing and for truck traffic, and that we are not looking to increase our processing limits. All right. The next question, will emissions increase with this project? And the answer is no. As Todd showed in the slide before, that many of the parameters are going to be reduced, and some of them by up to 95%. The next question, will you process liquids without a bag house? And the answer is no. We will start processing liquids only when a bag house has been installed on the boiler. So remember, we've got 3 boilers, and we're going to install a bag house on each of the boilers separately or sequentially. So once a bag house is equipped with a boiler, once a boiler is equipped with a bag house, we'll be able to process liquids. And I'll talk about that schedule in sliders. Next questions. Is this project harmful to my health? The answer is no. Our recent health risk assessment shows health impacts well below levels set by the US EPA and NJDP. And the next 2 questions are similar in the fact that they're asking of, will we be accepting landfill leachate, and will you be processing liquids containing PFAS? And the answer is no to both. All right, next slide, I'll be talking about the project timeline. So we put this timeline together because a lot of folks had said, hey, we want the bag house. How fast can you install it? So this is kind of an idea or of what we think can happen. So I'll start with July of this year. We did have the community benefit agreement signed with the city of Camden. Also in July, we submitted our air permit application or modification to DEP. On October, we submitted the solid waste permit modification to DEP. Then we also posted the EJ public hearing day notice for the meeting that we're having today. We'll move to January 2023. Remember, the comments for this public hearing and the public comment period ends January 7th, 2023. And then for first quarter 2023, we're hoping to have the air permit technically complete and a draft permit issued. And then Q2 and Q3 in 2023, we're expecting to have the solid waste permit technically complete and a draft permit issued. And then at this time, New Jersey DEP would have their own hearings for the solid waste and air permits. All right. For Q3, Q4 2023, we're hoping to have final permits. And once we have the final permits at that point, we are now ready to order and place equipment orders and get the site prepared for installation. So I do want to point out that even if we order that time frame, you look at the next point that the bag house probably won't be delivered until Q3 2024. And again, it could take 9 to 12 months even after we place the order, really because of supply chain issues and global issues that are happening right now. So if we do get the bag house and the equipment by Q3 2024, we should have it installed and ready to run and process liquids for Q1 2025. We would hope to have the second unit processing or startup and liquids processing for Q1 2026, and then have the third and final unit bag house installed and liquids processing for Q3 2026. All right. Next, I will pass it over to Brittany Addison, our Community Outreach Manager for Camden.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brittany Addison, and I am the Community Relations Specialist for Covanta Camden facility. Since 2011, Covanta has been committed to protecting the communities we serve and have facilities in. Our model serves as an industry-first environmental justice policy and continues to evolve and help guide our community engagement. We have done and continue to do the work, and this is our way of being transparent and a great neighbor. Some key parts of our commitments include open, two-way communication on community issues and concerns, as well as having public participation regarding our facility, permits, and the processes. On the next slide, you will be able to hear more about our environmental justice policies and practices. Because it's great to have a policy, but our environmental justice efforts are far more than just words. For example, we were the only company who publicly supported and testified on behalf of the environmental justice bill. We've installed new bag houses in cities like Newark and Huntsville. In 2011, we implemented additional controls and reductions in NOx for cities like Camden and others like Fairfax. To further reduce any impacts, our facilities, which run under federal regulations, as Todd has shown, we are planning to install a bag house and upgrade our scrubber. Next slide, please. We attend public monthly meetings with our partners from Camden Collaborative Initiative, Morgan Village, Waterfront South, and CCSD. On Tuesday, December 6th, we met with the Community Benefit Agreement team regarding planning efforts for Waterfront South and Morgan Village communities, which are located closest to our facility. During this meeting, planning efforts and spending ideas were underway for impactful community opportunities. This grant will be split amongst both communities. However, please let me be clear when I say we will continue to support the efforts throughout the entire city of Camden, as we always have. On the next slide, you will see, in 2021, we conducted 415 hours of outreach with 28 organizations throughout the city of Camden. We are on pace to exceed our community outreach efforts, partners, collaborations, and still maintain and sustain the relationships that we have built. If I could have you go to the next slide. One of the things that we are actively working on and continuing to do is hire talent from this amazing city. We do have a few employees who were born and proudly raised here, but we know that we can do better. With that being said, we intend to increase our efforts to continue to employ Camden's own. If you've seen us during our sustainability festival that was hosted in Farnham Park, we were actively recruiting and plan to continue to do so moving forward. But that's not all. We're also engaging historically Black colleges and universities looking for talent. This includes hosting job fairs on college campuses nationwide. And by the end of this project, we would like to increase the amount of Camden-specific employees from 13 to at least 20%. We have both trade and professional career paths available within our city. On the next slide, please take a look over some of our community outreach efforts that have been recognized and know that we are fully committed to doing more. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to Jack as we advance to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. So just a reminder again that the permit renewal applications, existing permits, they could all be seen on these websites, www.covanta.com/Camden. You can view more information on the Camden Green Initiative at info.covanta.com/CGI. And a reminder that comments are due by January 7th, 2023. And you can submit them by email, camdenpubliccomments@covanta.com, and also by mail to the address below, attention Grizel Rivera. So before I pass it back to Lee so we can start the questions session, I do want to note that the questions today would be answered by some of the folks that you've already heard from on this presentation. Also, some of the questions could be answered by Patricia Earls, our Environmental Director, Lloyd Danik, our Director of Government Relations, and also Mike Van Brunt, our Vice President of Sustainability. All right, so let's pass it over to Lee to start some questions.
Thank you, Jack. I think that there's a fair number of questions in the Q&A down below. I see a couple of people with raised hands as well, and we'll get to everyone. But let's start off with the with two questions that are related. And I think, Trish, that you would be ideal to answer these questions. The first question is, how do you expect the older people in the community who don't have computers or internet access to participate in this hearing? And the second question, which is related to the first, is the process online is unfair and intended to exclude the community who will not support your application. How do you plan to change that?
Well, thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Patricia Earls, the New Jersey Regional Environmental Manager. So when we were organizing this hearing, we were working with New Jersey DEP's Office of Permitting and Project Navigation, or OPPN, who is the office that handles these hearings, or handles at least the guidance for permit applicants to set them up. So it was recommended that we do it as a virtual hearing, just to make, the recording of the hearing a little bit easier. Again, this is going to be posted on our website afterwards for people to view at any other time. And actually, believe it or not, we tend to get more better attendance at these Zoom meetings, just because it's a little easier for folks to be able to, see it. And I do understand there are older residents that may not have computer access. And certainly the Camden staff, Todd, Jack, Alyssa, Brittany, have done quite a few meetings and are certainly willing to meet with any other members of the public that would like to discuss the project further and make additional comments, and we can, certainly answer their questions at a future time.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So I see that Camden for Clean Air had a question on the Q&A board, which asked, how does burning water increase efficiency? Was this a misstatement? Did Jack mean that it cools down the waste enough that more waste can be burned? So Jack, could you take that one?
Yeah, so basically when I say operational efficiencies, the bag house is also going to help on the operational efficiency side, which will help with the processing. So that's what I meant. It wasn't related to the liquids, it was more on the bag house.
Okay, thank you. And I also see that Camden for Clean Air has a hand up. So if we could unmute that microphone and let them go, I will start the clock for their 3 minutes.
Yes. Am I the one that's actually allowed to speak now?
You are. We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Great. So I'm listening to the presentation, and if I didn't know better, it sounds convincing. But I'm concerned about this as recently as the last week, and walking through the community and trying to inform the community about do they know that there is a public meeting taking place? And all the people that I talked to were not aware that there's a public meeting here. So it's like, what is your outreach? And the people that I also have talked to, they do not agree with Covanta dealing with liquid waste, adding more trucks and pollution, and the ones still talking about the issues that they're dealing with their health. So I'm trying to figure out, even when you talked about your copy of your health risk assessment, how did you assess the health risk, or even the current health situation in that area? Because according to the people, they haven't heard from Covanta since before the pandemic. And back to the community benefits agreement, the people were not even aware of that. The fact that the people had mentioned that they had a meeting on October 27th, and the permit was already signed off for them, saying that they agreed with it, when they knew nothing about that. And that really insulted the fact that $25,000 and 2.5%, but that doesn't cover or deal with the health impact that they already are filling, let alone bringing additional waste within this area. And the fact that Camden is doing better than other areas, if that's the case, then Camden should be sending their trash to other places and not the other municipalities sending their trash here. And now you want them to bring additional waste here. So again, this process should be in the community where people have accessibility to get there in person, and also additionally having a virtual part to it. That would be more transparent. But the way you guys is coming off, it sounds good and convincing, but you know what? You cannot put a price on the health, the cumulative health of people living in that area. And you trying to bring in additional waste within this area. So, again, it's disheartening because that's what's not being said here. The people, whoever that team was that met to go over the community benefits agreement, they did. How you going to do that after? And you're going to say that you agree to something, but you never bring it to the community to say if they supported that. Because they're asking the question, well, where did you come with 2.5% of? And 2.5% of what amount? But $25,000, and then you have a third party that's going to be overseeing the funding. Okay, is there any administrative costs or anything? There's nothing to explain to the community as a whole, but you have a small group that's a part of a circle that's making these decisions. The process is unfair and it needs to be reviewed.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Moving on, I see that Sean Mohan, I apologize if I've butchered that name, has his hand up. So if we could unmute Sean's microphone, that would be great.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Sean Mohan. I'm the Executive Director of Tri-County Sustainability. We're the regional hub for the 101 towns, 10 legislative districts, and 1.2 million people in Camden, Burlington, and Gloucester counties. Why does Camden County continue to get failing grades from the American Lung Association? Well, there are several reasons, but the biggest stationary source of emissions is the Covanta facility on Newton Creek in Camden, which happens to be 3 miles from my house. The reason the incinerator boilers run at 1800 degrees is because most of the trash they process is wet household food waste. Going forward, for both economic and environmental reasons, all of our municipalities are going to have to implement food waste reduction and mitigation policies, including anaerobic digestion. There are billions of dollars in federal funds coming online to support these initiatives. I bring it up here because, per the terms of the Danish firm EQT's leveraged buyout of Covanta last year, they have to meet several key performance indicators related to growth in the amount of waste they process. That's not going to happen once these municipal food waste policies are implemented. It's an antiquated business model for an antiquated facility. With that in mind, we call on the DEP to deny Camden County Energy Recovery Associates LP request to modify both its Title V operating permit and solid waste facility permit for the Camden County Energy Recovery Center as it relates to liquid direct injection. Regarding the bag house, you guys should do that anyway. Honestly, who wants to go to a park if the kids might get asthma playing there? Thank you all, and happy holidays.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. They are appreciated. There are numerous questions in the Q&A, so we'll go to a couple of those next. Joseph Bouvier asked, how many Camden residents are employed at the facility now, and what percentage of the Covanta workforce is that? Todd, I believe you have those answers.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your question, Joe. And it is very important for us to try to get more Camden people employed at the facility. Currently, we have 47 full-time employees. 6 of them were born and raised here in the city of Camden. We also have 2 employees with our corporate office that were born and raised here in the Camden facility. So for the Camden plan, it's about 13%. And as Brittany said, we are really looking to increase that up to 20 to 25% and get many Camden people as we can hired into the facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. David Pringle has his hand up, so can we take his microphone, unmute his microphone, please? Mr. Pringle? I believe that you're muted, sir. We've unmuted you. Mr. Pringle, we cannot hear you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
We can now, sir. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. I had trouble. I hit the wrong button. My name is David Pringle. I am representing Clean Water Action, which is a national environmental group. We have 150,000 members in New Jersey and have been extremely active on the garbage incineration issue ever since the Kane administration had the evil idea to put an incinerator in every single county. And Camden was special. They were going to get 2 incinerators. Fortunately, we defeated one, but unfortunately, we're having this hearing and you exist today. I'd like to congratulate Covanta. You get a gold medal tonight in greenwashing, which is a fancy way of basically saying you're lying. You say, you pretend to be a good corporate partner when your basic business model is to make money poisoning the community that's already overburdened and buying support, or at least to dampen opposition. You present a false choice of incineration versus landfilling, when at best they are the worst options and number 5 and number 6 on the list. Recycling is actually, everybody thinks recycling is wonderful. It's certainly better than the alternatives, but it's only number 4 on the list. Reduction, reuse, and composting are far superior. So your basic premise of this meeting is false. You're arguing that you're wonderful. It's incorrect when you say you're better than landfilling, but even then you're ignoring all of the things that are far superior to both. If you want to be a good partner, you would be doing all the things that you put in your presentation tonight that reduce emissions, and not any of the things that increase emissions. As was previously said, I think by Sean, you should be installing the bag house if you're going to exist. You should be upgrading the scrubber. You should have done it 10, 15, 20 years ago voluntarily. You should not be proposing to burn liquid waste. It is horribly inefficient, and it is impossible for it not to increase emissions. Now, you may do some things that will otherwise reduce emissions, so the net might not be as bad, or maybe it's even better than it is today.
Sir, you have 1 minute left.
But you should be, again, reducing all emissions, not increasing emissions. And you basically lie when you say, is it harmful to my health? It meets all acceptable standards. Tell me what amount of particulates is healthy for an infant to consume. How much lead is healthy to consume? So if you want to be a good partner, do the good things in this project. Install the bag house, upgrade your scrubber, but don't lie to us. Be a good partner. Don't start burning liquid waste. Stop killing people and poisoning them.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. We have a fair amount of written Q&A, so we're gonna go back to some of the questions that are pending. Joseph Bouvier asked, didn't Covanta promise to install filter bag houses the last time it submitted a permit application for approval to DEP? Why weren't they installed at that time? Jack, I think you can answer that one.
Yes, thank you, Joseph, for the question. I'm not aware of a permit application that we submitted for Camden for installing a bag house prior to. So maybe you can give a little bit more description or time frame, but as far as I know, this is the first time that we've submitted an application for the scrubbers and the bag house for Camden.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack. There's a question pending from Quinn DeMena. why hasn't there been upgrades before wanting to bring more types of waste to Camden? Neighborhoods have been demanding overdue filter scrubbers. Todd, I don't know if this is for you or for Jack.
I can start with this, and Todd can jump in if needed. I think the need for baghouse, yeah, I think that's been talked about for a while. And you know, we started, I think, as a company, we had taken over the facility in 2013 from Foster Wheeler. And the discussions about a baghouse really started in about 2017, 2018. And if you remember, there were discussions of bringing it in along with a microgrid and whatnot. So when those talks about the microgrid had waned away, and we were thinking of other opportunities to still install the baghouse, because there were other things that were discussed with the microgrid as far as some financing, some Camden County waste, and actually the microgrid power pricing as well. So you know, as all of those things were, I guess, removed or weren't feasible at the time, what we had decided to do or thought about is that, you know, liquid waste is processing liquids is something that we have experience with. We have a lot of experience with, and knowing that, hey, the potential in the environment is really minimal, and that it is a vehicle to help pay for this upgrade to the AQC, our air quality control system. So we started to go forward with it, and I will say that, you know, there were some delays. Prior to the pandemic, we did have a change in CEO within Covanta. Then the pandemic hit, this delayed things, and that put a screeching halt to a lot of things happening. And then again, as caller had mentioned earlier, that the purchase of EQT also had to slow things down. So when you get a new owner and say, hey, listen, we want to spend $60 million, you know, it takes some time to explain and go through it. So yes, there has been delays to the project, but really the good news is that we're well on our way. We have the permits submitted, DEP. We're having the environmental justice hearing today. Looking forward to respond to your comments and hoping we can move forward.
Thank you, Jack. Alexis Mountes has had her hand up for quite some time, so if we could unmute her microphone, that would be fantastic.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so just want to kind of reiterate what some other people have been saying around y'all kind of framing yourselves as a green alternative to landfills, because we do know that incineration is still very bad for the environment, and it does not avoid landfills, because you still need a place to dispose of the toxic ash that is produced when you burn trash. And then besides toxic ash, you are producing a lot of pollutants into the air, including lead. And Camden and its surrounding towns do have a much worse air quality, a much higher levels of health problems that are associated with poor air quality. As well as the fact that trash incinerators, even if they are producing energy, they're producing even more greenhouse gases than coal power plants do. So, you know, incinerators are being phased out in the US for a reason. We're not building new ones because we do know the fact that they have a really harsh environmental impact, and there is a very high cost of operations for them. So I don't think that we should be increasing the waste that the facility is taking in, and we need to really be moving away from trash incineration to more zero waste approaches that are better for the environment. And I also just want to add that I know there's been some talks about accessibility with this process. And I know someone else mentioned like hybrid meetings. That is a way to make it accessible for more people, have an in-person meeting with a call-in or Zoom option. And there just wasn't a lot of notice for this meeting. The permit pages are really, really long, and they're also only available in English. So if you really want to be accessible to people, you will also offer information in Spanish, because we have a large Spanish-speaking population in Camden. So just something to note as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll go back to the Q&A board for just a minute or two. William Davis asked, how old is the facility and is it currently up to standards to even consider additional processes? He comments that it seems to be two conflicting narratives. It makes it difficult to know whose stats to trust. And Todd, I think you can answer that.
Yeah. Mr. Davis, thank you for the question. So the facility became operational in 1991. So it's about 31 years old. Covanta acquired the facility in about 2013. And since that time, we have been making improvement and repairs to the system to bring it back up to the original design specs. And we continue to make them repairs and improvements to the facility. It's much like your house. If you bought a house or you had a house and you would change out the roof or you would redo the room to keep it at its original design spec. So the facility is in good shape, and we continue to meet all of the design and the permit requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Martin Levin asked the question of whether we could provide a list of tests that will be performed when a truck with liquid waste arrives at Covanta. Michael Van Brunt, I believe you could answer that question.
Sure, thanks. Thank you, Martin, for the question. So there's a couple of sets of tests. You asked the question about what tests do we provide for each truck. So when each truck comes in, we'll test the load for pH, which is how acidic or how alkaline the waste is, to make sure it's in a proper range. We'll also check for the amount of solids that are present. We can't take high solids waste. Sometimes you'll get loads in that've got a lot of sediment or solids in them that we can't process. We'll also check for what's called a flash point, which is an indication of how flammable the liquid waste is. We can't take, for example, you couldn't take gasoline as a liquid waste. It has to be water-based. We also test for reactivity. So we'll take a little bit of the sample from the truck, and we'll mix it with the sample that's in the tank to make sure that there's no adverse reactions. Those reactions can be, polymerization reactions. They can be increase in temperature or odors. And that way we make sure that we're not bringing in anything that's incompatible with what we already have on site. Before we even get to that point, everything has to go through an approval process. During the approval process, depending on where the waste stream is coming from, whether it be, for example, like the paint manufacturer or a different process that we're given as examples, we will actually require the generator of the liquid waste to give us analytical results on things that are sort of appropriate for that particular waste stream, for example. So if we're getting a liquid waste stream in from a machine shop, right, that's for a coolant, we'll ask them to provide us metals results so that we're not bringing in any heavy metals that are contained in the liquid waste. So it's that two-step process where we're both looking at the waste stream itself, but then also running through the individual tests that we do when the tanker comes into the facility.
Thank you very much, Michael. Teresa Shields has had her hand up for quite some time. So if we could unmute Ms. Shields' mic and have her speak. Ms. Shields, are you there? Ms. Shields? Teresa Shields? Okay, I don't believe that. Oh, there you are.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a comment and a question. I heard the presenter talk about Europe and Germany and how we are doing better than those countries as far as the environment is concerned. But I just would like to say that communities from the East Coast to the West Coast are trying to shut down such facilities that we're talking about today. And I have not heard one good reason why this one should remain open. I know that you showed the data stating that there would be less emissions of the poisons in the community, but for 30 years, that's a lifetime for some of the people in Camden. For 30 years, lead, mercury, dioxide, and other gases have been emitted into the community. So that's my statement. Now, my question is, what surveys, what longitudinal studies have been done to ascertain what influences all of these toxins have had on the community? Because the data shows that at least 49% of the residents in Camden who have to go to the hospital for asthma, or for Camden County, who have to go to the hospital for asthma, are from the city of Camden. So that's my question. And my final question is, what other communities outside of the African-American communities and the Hispanic communities have these kind of facilities been proposed to? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. I don't know, Jack, if you want to take that, or if Michael, you want to take that.
Sure, Lee, I can take that question.
Very good.
Thanks very much for your question. I mean, I think we do, as part of the permitting process, undertake sort of a very important exercise, which is a human health risk assessment, which is required. And during that assessment, we have to follow a very specific process that's developed by the US EPA. It's approved by NJDEP to evaluate what the health risks are from the facility at its permitted level. So that's sort of very, very conservative. So you have to assume when you go through this process that you're going right up to the permit limit, which is not something that we do. We operate typically well below the permit limits. We've been sort of working through that process now with a third party engineering firm does that work for us and goes through that analysis. The data that we have so far from that analysis, which will be public, indicates that we're well below the thresholds that NJDEP has accepted with regard to unacceptable health risk to the community. So in layman's terms, what that means is that the NJDEP has concluded that this facility is protective of human health based on the information in the health risk assessment and the guidance document that the US EPA has put together.
Thank you, Michael. I think I've got a question for Jack. Chris Ace asked, how will the upgrades be funded? Will it be private or will there be government assistance? Jack?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Yeah, so the upgrades will be paid for by Covanta, no government funding. And again, as everyone hears, that we're looking for the revenues from the liquids processing to assist in paying for the $60 million upgrade.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shields asked a question about, hold on, I apologize, I lost it. There's a question from Sue Drew. I'll come back to Mr. Shields' question. There's a question from Sue Drew. Camden's air quality is consistently an F. F means fail. How will adding another category of burnable garbage improve our air quality? My child is a teenager breathing this air filled with particulates. Who can answer this question? Michael, is that for you?
Sure, I can answer this question. I mean, I think, the most important thing is with the backhouse installation. It's really the cornerstone of this project. There's the backhouse and the scrubber. We're going to have very significant reductions in emissions, across the board, ranging from reductions in estimated NOx reductions of, NOx emissions reductions of 5%, up through estimating lead emission reductions of up to 95%. And importantly, that's all on a mass basis, and it's all including the liquid waste that we're proposing to process at this facility as part of the project. So all in all, the environmental performance of the facility will be significantly better than it is today. It is important to note that, even where we stand today with the electrostatic precipitators there, the facility already operates well below its permitted levels. This project will bring that even further than where we stand today. And as Todd pointed out, we're all really very excited about this project because this will be the first retrofit of an existing waste energy facility with this recirculating dry scrubber system and a very effective backhouse. So as we talk about those particulate emissions, that's a perfect example of how this technology will be offer really best in class when it comes to scrubber technology out there in the market today. So it's all in all, it's a tremendous improvement in the environmental footprint of this facility.
Thank you, Michael. Chris Whitehead asked the question, how has your recycling recovery rate for metals trended over the course of the last permit? Todd, you've already got your camera on, so.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Mr. Whitehead, thank you for that question about the metal recycling rate. I can't give you the exact answer of the number a ton per year, but I do want to tell you, I became the facility manager here in 2019. At that time, our ferrous recovery rate was about 3.0% of the incoming trash. Currently today, we recover about 3.7% of the incoming trash as metal that we recovered. The non-ferrous recovery rate in 2019 was 0.18% of the incoming trash, and currently today about 0.21% of the incoming trash is non-ferrous. So we are continuing to working to get all the metal out of the incoming waste stream that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Mr. Bouvier has had his hand up for some time. I also note that Camden for Clean Air has their hand up again. I would remind you that you've already spoken, sir, so we're not going to acknowledge that hand. But Mr. Bouvier, you haven't spoken, so please unmute Mr. Bouvier's mic.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I'll start off. My name is Joe Bouvier. I am from Merchantville, one of the neighboring towns. I am a member of Camden for Clean Air as a volunteer. I'm also a volunteer member of the Merchantville Green Team. For environmental reasons, I'm really against incinerators as a whole because they, produce greenhouse gases. They're bad for the environment, and we should be switching over to renewables in any event. But the incinerators are bad polluters as well. And New Jersey's Department of Health has posted studies on its website showing that air quality is statistically significantly worse in Camden, Gloucester City, Collingswood, Oakland, Pennsauken, Merchantville, Mount Ephraim, and Brooklawn, virtually all the towns surrounding Camden and Camden itself, as compared to other municipalities in the state. So we've got a pollution problem that leads to poor air quality. Most of these same towns have higher risks of cancer from breathing in carcinogens in the air, and Camden's rates are statistically significantly higher when compared to the statewide average. So something around Camden seems to be causing health risks and harm to people. And the studies that I've been looking at say that the Covanta facility produces over 50% of the industrial pollution waste in the county of Camden County. So it appears that the incinerator is causing harm to people. And frankly, that's what we want to stop. We want people to be healthier. We want this facility not to harm people. I think that the meeting tonight really should have been a public meeting around the Camden facility so that neighbors could come in and talk to the Covanta people about the health problems that they're having. The health risks in that area are much higher than in other areas. And in the spirit of New Jersey's soon-to-be effective environmental justice law, I feel like Covanta should be prepared to show that its proposed additional operations, if the permits are granted, will not pose any increased health risk to residents of Camden, because they've for a long time gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to harm due to environmental facilities, environmental hazards coming from facilities. I do have a number of other questions, but I think I'm probably just gonna, I want to make that comment, and I might submit more questions in the chat box. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bouvier. And I would remind you that you can also submit comments and questions to the electronic mail address, camdenpubliccomments@covanta.com, that's up on the screen, and those will be answered as part of the formal public comment process with the New Jersey DEP. I now see that we have 2 Camden for Clean Air individuals. I'll ask that we unmic one. I am going to assume that they are different people than the gentleman who spoke before. So I would ask you to identify your name. We don't want to discourage public comment, but by the same token, we want to give everybody the same exact fair time. So with that, we'll unmute one of the Camden for Clean Air people.
Okay, can you hear me? My name is Chester Hicks. I also live in Merchantville. I just have one simple question. What can prevent this project from going forward? What could stop it?
Mr. Hicks, I'm not sure that anyone on the Covanta team is qualified to answer. I think that is a question that you need to direct to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, not for Covanta. With that, I would ask that we unmute the other Camden for Clean Air individual and get their comments. You, sir, with your Camden for Clean Air, but you have a photo with a man with a beard. I don't believe your microphone is unmuted on your end.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll keep my comments pretty short. I think many on this call know the history of opposition to this facility ever opening in South Camden, from Father Michael Doyle to Kelly Francis to the local NAACP chapter to local residents rallying against this facility for decades. It should be closed tomorrow if I had the power to do it. And frankly, it would close and pay reparations to families that had to breathe in the toxic pollution produced by this facility for years. So it's a major reason, in my opinion, why Camden school children are 150% more likely to go to the emergency room for asthma compared to the state average. I would ask that Covanta have a truly civically engaged and open public engagement process over these permits. We had a meeting just a few days ago in the Ferry Avenue Public Library branch with residents from just your backyard, just where in Crestbury apartment, sadly, there's a playground with the smokestack that puts out toxic metals, toxic pollution every single day to these children. They have to breathe it in. Members from that community attended that meeting, and many specifically said some didn't have phones. Many did not have access to a computer. This is a conscious choice by Covanta, a corporation with extreme resources to hire a consultant to know this, that they are purposely excluding this population from being able to meaningfully engage with this process. Most of these people are people of color, multi-generational Camden residents, people that have paid the highest price from having to have a polluting, disgusting facility in their backyard where their children have no other choice but to breathe in the toxic fumes put out by this facility. Covanta is making a conscious choice to apply for these permits before New Jersey's historic environmental justice law has been put into effect. A very openly cynical move on your part. Covanta continues to have a very good greenwashing campaign on its own behalf, where it gives money to our public school, which is sickening to me because these school children their garbage, when they throw it away in their public school system in Camden, goes and is burned in this facility. And when they go out to the playground, they have to breathe it in because of this facility.
Sir,
This
you have
facility
30
should be
seconds.
closed. 30 seconds, thank you. I call on the DEP, I call on Governor Murphy, I call on our Camden County commissioners, I call on our city public officials to do everything in their power to shut this facility down, to slow down this process, to enable meaningful public comment, and to stop taking blood money from this terrible corporation that is contributing extremely negatively towards the health outcomes of children and longtime residents of the city of Camden. I yield my time.
Thank you, sir. We have a question in the Q&A board from Asia Kurtz, who says, looking at your 2020 10K, you realized an increase in energy revenue of 28 million. If the bag house is so important, why did Covanta not invest in this necessary technology before now instead of unnecessarily tying its installation to this liquid revenue opportunity for your organization? Jack, I believe you could answer this question.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Kurtz. Yes, yeah, power pricing has seen a little bit better increase. Again, a lot of it is geographical of where you are as far as on the energy side. But you're right, that is one of the ways that we are also looking to help pay for this. It's not only just the liquid, it's also some of the revenues that we've seen increase. So and it's an effort of all revenues that we've had with some of the waste and the energy revenues as well as the potential liquid. So remember, it's a pretty significant investment. So it's a lot of ways we're going to try to pay for it, and energy, you're right, is included. You do have to be careful though. Again, remember that pricing, not too long ago was very low. So, but right now we are including energy revenues as also a source to help pay for the upgrades.
Thank you, Jack. Tobias Fox has his hand up in the chat area. Can we unmute Mr. Fox? Mr. Fox? I believe you're muted on your end, sir. We've opened up your mic. Mr. Fox? Are you there, sir? Okay. I guess we'll turn off his mic again, and hopefully Mr. Fox can.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I guess the link is automatically under Tobias Fox, but this is actually Spencer Malscat, a New Jersey resident. I'm just wondering, because I don't believe you guys answered in regards to facilities and non people of color POC group. How many facilities do you guys actually have and non people of color cities and townships? Because it seems like it's only predominantly in POC communities, and you see the detrimental effects that's having on not only the kids but the residents and also the surrounding residents by default.
Okay, and that's similar to a question. Sorry, I'll put my microphone on. That's similar to a question that Mr. Bouvier asked in the Q&A earlier. So do we have someone who can answer that question? I know that we have facilities throughout in various communities. So Michael?
Surely, I can take that question. The question is a good one. I think if we look at, the waste energy facilities across the country, and again, this is, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but certainly over half are located in historically burdened communities or communities that have historically borne a disproportionate impact. This is an issue that's been studied extensively. And when it has been studied, the race has been a factor in where these facilities initially were sited. We're not denying that. It's sort of an unfortunate, I think, history, not only of waste energy facilities, but frankly of the whole waste industry. Our job at this point in time is to take the facility that we operate where it's located today and operate it as well as we possibly can, and make sure we upgrade it to the equipment that we've proposed here in the permit application. So that's really what our focus is today: is how do we take this facility, which already meets its permit requirements, however, that is located in a community that has historically faced a disproportionate burden, and how can we improve on that performance?
And Michael, I apologize, I didn't turn on my camera. Michael, while I have you, there's a question from Camden for Clean Air that says, you say you'll burn pharmaceutical waste. Pharmaceuticals often include halogens, fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. Some of these chemicals will form the most toxic chemicals known to science, dioxins and furans, for which there is no safe dose. Most of these chemicals will be released as acid gases like hydrochloric and hydrofluoric acids, which are unsafe to breathe and be exposed to. Will Covanta commit not to take halogenated pharmaceutical wastes?
So we don't process bromine and iodine containing waste. So that's something that we definitely focus on. In terms of chloride containing waste, the challenge with chlorides is chloride or chlorine is it's a halogenated gas or a halogenated compound. That's endemic in a lot of waste. And so the way we manage that is through carefully controlled combustion. One of the reasons why we are so successful now in terms of bringing dioxin emissions down from waste energy facilities is because of that, the understanding around the combustion process. So there was a study that Columbia University did a few years ago that looked at the sources of dioxin in the country. By far, the leading sources of dioxin in the country now is uncontrolled combustion. So think about things like forest fires, landfill fires, building fires, even people's fireplaces are significant sources of dioxin. In a carefully controlled process, we can manage that. Your concern about the acid gases is an important one. That's specifically why we look at sort of the scrubber technology that we're looking at. So that recirculating dry scrubber, for example, will result in lower rates of acid gas emissions. And again, important to note too that chloride concern that you raise, that's something that we deal with in all sorts of waste. It's something, in fact, that even the food waste processing industry or anaerobic digestion facilities have to deal with because those chlorides and those kind of waste as well.
Thank you very much, Michael. Reverend Roy Jones has put a note in the chat that he has his hand up. I don't see it on my board, but could we unmute Reverend Jones's microphone and see if we can get him to speak? Reverend Jones?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, appreciate it. I didn't want to trouble you about that. I just didn't know whether you saw my hand up. So I'm not skipping the line, am I?
No, sir, but thank you for letting us know because there was something there that didn't let us see that. So thank you.
Let me just ask a couple of questions first, and if I can get quick answers, and then I have a comment at the end. Now, type 72 type waste includes sewage from septic tanks. Is that one of the types of waste that will be processed there?
Reverend Jones, I'd ask that you ask all of your questions and then we'll
okay, got you. Very good. All right. So that's the first question. Second question, what is the annual rate of truck traffic now at the facility and what will it increase to? The third question, how did you determine what the health impact on the community was. Was it through a cumulative health impact study or environmental impact study? How was it determined? Another question is, number 4 is, what is the amount of revenue back to the city of Camden? And number 5, what are you fully aware of the environmental justice profile for Camden? And so I want to just make a comment now and say that if Covanta is truly interested in being a partner with environmental justice people, environmental justice communities, you say you have a green initiative, it's very important that you do a cumulative health impact study. That is the only way you're going to be able to determine whether or not and what kind of health impact the plant has on the community. But I want to read a report, a statement from the New School for the Environment in New York. It says this. It says, incinerating trash is the most polluting way to deal with waste and emits more harmful air pollution than burning coal or natural gas for electricity. And then it goes on to say, this was done May 23rd, 2019. This is in a report from the New School in New York, their environmental center. Very knowledgeable people, a lot of scholars and researchers. And they said the second largest emitter of lead among Covanta's processing, that this processing nationwide, you guys represent the second largest emitter of lead in the country.
Sir, you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, just so I want you guys to respond to that, and just I want to end with that. I've been involved with environmental justice issues for 30 years, and there is a huge amount of companies that pollute the air, water, and soil in the city. And so we really don't need another facility that will possibly increase pollution in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we'll take your questions a little bit out of order just so that we get speakers, but in the right order. But Todd, if you could answer the question as to the type 72 waste and the annual rate of truck traffic, that would be
sure. Reverend John, thank you for your question there. And so type 72 waste has a lot of different waste streams that are all encompassing for the New Jersey solid waste permits. We are not proposing, nor do we want to burn some of the waste that are listed in type 72 waste. So we can, in our permit, spell out what we want to process on that. And we are definitely not looking to process leachate or sewage sludge, Reverend. On the annual rate of truck traffic, you asked, currently our facility has about 180 to 195 trucks per day. And that is for our reagents, the MSW, the metal that goes out and the ash that goes out. If we, after the Camden Green issue, we will increase that by potentially at maximum 1 truck per hour, which would be 190 to 205 trucks per day. We have done a full traffic analysis, and we will make that public once it gets completed. The other thing that I just wanted to answer here, Lee, I'm just throwing in one more answer to a question, and that's a little bit about how we have engaged the community in the waterfront south and Morgan villages. Alyssa Wild, who is our community outreach manager, was unable to be here. But starting in the beginning of this year, we have canvassed the Morgan Village and the waterfront south area and went door to door and had meetings set up to talk to residents. We also had various other meetings with the residents and tried to reach out to them. The hearing tonight is not the end process, and the Reverend Jones and some of our other leaders, Biden Neal, I think is on. We would love to be able to set up meetings with you and your local resident if you could help us together so we could come and talk some more about this process in our facility. So we are open to that. And I think we're going to get to question 4, and Jack Don answered that about the revenue to the city.
Yep. So, Jack, question number 4 from the Reverend was the amount of revenue back to the city of Camden.
Sure. Thank you, Jones, for the question. So we currently pay right now a host fee for the facility to the city of Camden. We do a couple things. We pay a host fee. It's typically about $1.9 million a year goes to the city of Camden. In addition, we're paying about $600,000 property taxes also to the city of Camden. So total of about $2.5 million that we're paying annually to the city of Camden.
Okay, thank you, Jack. So Michael Van Brunt, going back to question number 3, how did Covanta determine the health impacts here?
Yes, thank you, Reverend. We determined the health impacts for this particular facility with what's called a human health risk assessment. It is not a cumulative study, as you point out. However, you know, it is what we did is still appropriate here, because actually what we're proposing results in a pretty significant reduction in emissions and a reduction in human impacts. And so I think that's really important. I want to make sure that doesn't get lost. With the baghouse, you know, the significant reductions in the emissions that will result from that, you know, will result already low human health impacts to even further. So that's very significant from that standpoint.
Okay. The other question was question 5. Are you aware of the environmental justice, fully aware of the environmental justice profile for the city of Camden?
Yes, we are very aware, both from just sort of looking at the numbers, which is what we have to do when we're looking at sort of, you know, the environmental justice law. But then also more importantly with what Jack's team and Todd's team, you know, being members of the community, being in the community, not only see it from like the number standpoint, but actually see it firsthand.
And Michael, while I have you on the spot, Mr. Bouvier asked a question about how the studies could be obtained. Do you have information on that?
Was this the question on the share of the air pollution?
No, specifically, has Covanta conducted studies to try to determine if its operations cause an increased risk of health problems in the city of Camden and surrounding towns? And if so, where can these studies be obtained?
Yes, good question. So that speaks specifically to the human health risk assessment that we are completing as part of the permitting process. That will be submitted to NJDEP, so that will be a public document.
Okay, very good. Jack, let's pick on you for a minute and give Michael a break. The Camden for Clean Air asked, it's nice, or stated, it's nice to see that you don't plan to burn landfill leachate liquids that include PFAS, pesticides, and such. We know you do burn some of these things at other incinerators, such as landfill leachate. Will you commit to an enforceable permit condition that prohibits you from burning the wastes you say you will not burn?
Yes, so as Todd mentioned earlier, ID 72 has a lot of, I guess, other categories of liquids, and yeah, there's things that we don't want, and we could as well make some same note. So you're correct, landfill leachate is processed at some of the other preventive facilities that process liquids. That is something that, again, that we made clear that we do not want. And yeah, we would be willing to also put that on a list of liquids not to be processed.
Okay, thank you. Patricia, could we get you up there are some questions around the procedures here. So Dorothy Foley from Merchantville asked, have you formally noticed residents within 1 mile or at least a quarter-mile radius of your plans? How many Camden residents are on this Zoom meeting? I can tell you that I can answer the second part of that, because we have 65 participants on the Zoom right now, and we had more than that, but several have dropped off. But if you could answer the question about the formal notice, and then also more broadly describe some of the notice provisions and what was done to promote this meeting, that would be appreciated. There's a fair number of questions on that.
Surely. Thanks. Yeah, so again, you know, having this hearing, we're following the Administrative Order 25 requirements of having the meetings and the notification requirements. So we, you know, again, the Administrative Order requires a 30-day notice. We did do a 60-day notice where we published our notice of this meeting on the New Jersey DEP's Environmental Justice website, where they list all the environmental justice hearings under the AO 25 order. Also, we had an ad continuously posted in Tap into Camden since October 7th. We also published a notice in the Courier Post, as well as the Anointed News Journal, again, about 60 days before this hearing. So again, those are the outlets that we picked for this, which we, you know, based on some input from folks in Camden. Also, we did send out some email invitations to some contacts we had. So, you know, we did get the word out. Again, you know, I would encourage everyone here, all environmental justice hearings under the AO 25 are on the New Jersey DEP's website. So that's where you can see all of them happening. But that is, you know, we did follow the requirements, and again, under the guidance of the New Jersey DEP.
Okay, thank you very much, Tricia.
And hey, can I answer that as well? Just also want to talk about it, and I think Todd touched upon it as well. I mean, this project we've been talking, I mentioned we got the FAQs because of all the discussions we've been having with folks, residents, organizations, and whatnot. So, you know, again, we've had this project discussed with the Camden City School District meetings. We had, you know, with the Camden Collaborative Initiative, monthly initiative meetings. We always give an update on this project as well for all of those who are attending the AIR group. And then again, that the meeting that Todd talked about when we canvassed the neighborhood, we had an open meeting, Waterfront South, on June 9th. And there was probably about 10 to 12 residents that came and listened to the presentation. We talked about the entire project itself, just basically what we're talking about tonight, the community benefit agreement as well. So, you know, as well as the residents from Morgan Village, you know, our sustainability festival, we also talked, I talked to myself at least 12 to 15 people explaining what the project was. So we're going to continue to talk to people about the project, let people know. But, you know, it was important for us when, you know, especially for that Waterfront South meeting, we wanted to talk to folks about it before we even submitted the permit application. So again, we will continue to talk and you know, Todd had an open invitation, questions, and of course of the plan. Thanks, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Van Brunt, back to you. There is a question that says, are you monitoring the frequency of asthma cases in the neighborhood surrounding the Covanta Camden plant? How does that compare with other plants where baghouse technology is already implemented?
Right. Oh, thank you, Lee, and thank you for the question. That's not something that we monitor, and the reason for that is it's a very complex issue. You know, it's something. It's a very interesting one. I mean, it's significant interest to me. I grew up with asthma. You know, I think first was diagnosed with asthma at about 8 years old. I still am challenged with asthma. Incidence of asthma is extraordinarily complicated in terms of understanding what the causes are. And invariably it's sort of the result of, and it was brought up earlier in the conversation today, of cumulative impacts. And when we've spoken with NJDEP about looking at cumulative impacts and how we assess that, one of the things that they really appreciated that we did was to look at how do we compare to other sources of air pollution in the airshed. So when we look at sort of potential stressors of asthma, things like particulate, ground level ozone, NOx emissions, it's important to sort of look at what are all the contributors for that, which is why we look at our emissions of particulate matter and NOx as it relates to the airshed. And our contribution, it's a contribution. We emit those compounds, but it's a relatively small part of what's emitted in the overall airshed. And if I might, just another question came up that I noticed too. One of the participants or one of the commenters had asked, why did you dilute the airshed by including Philadelphia?
Yeah, Michael, let me just read the whole question before.
Oh, sure, Lee, thank you.
Everybody knows. Yep. It says, in the slide where you showed the Covanta share of air pollution in the area, why did you dilute it by including all of Philadelphia? And using the 2017 data for it, did you include the largest air polluter in the region, the PES oil refinery in Philadelphia, which was operating in 2017 but blew up and shut down for good in 2019?
Right. Thank you, Lee.
Sure.
And so I'll address the first part too. Why did we include Philadelphia? We included Philadelphia because it's right across the river from Camden. So the air pollution that occurs in Philadelphia invariably sort of blows across the river and impacts the citizens of Camden. We presented this to the DEP. We were kind of wondering if that was sort of an appropriate way of looking at it as well. And a response that we got back from DEP was actually they agreed with sort of that approach, but they also noted that for the purposes of NOx emissions, we probably should have looked at it even in greater area because NOx can be transported over pretty long distances, which is one of the reasons why New Jersey is so engaged in NOx standards in Pennsylvania, with the recognition that NOx emissions that occur in power plants in Pennsylvania wind up in New Jersey. So that's why we looked at that a broader airshed, was to more accurately reflect what our share was as part of that total airshed. The second question about the inclusion of the refinery from 2017, the way that we do this analysis is we look purely at what's in the US EPA's national emissions inventory. EPA does sort of a national emissions inventory every 3 years. Whenever that new inventory comes out, that's the data that we use. We don't try to go in and make corrections for either facilities that have closed or facilities that are new, because then we start getting away from EPA being a source of that data. So when the new data does come out, it should be coming out here shortly, we will update our analysis to compare it with the inventory that the EPA puts together.
Okay, Michael, while you're on the hot seat, let's give you one more. You're on a roll. There was a question at the beginning that we just didn't get to. We started scrolling down too quickly. But the question is, if Covanta doesn't get the permit for the liquid waste, will Covanta still add the baghouse filter?
The way that we've put in the application is inclusive of the baghouse, the advanced scrubber system, and the improvements to our NOx emission control together with the liquid waste application. So that's the way that it's been submitted currently. If that doesn't work out, then we would have to sort of go back to the drawing board again. And certainly Jack and Todd can speak to the business side of things, but one of the really important things about the liquid waste revenue, it's a way of introducing a waste that has no increase in environmental impact relative to the waste that we process today. It provides us another revenue source that we can help pay for the cost of not only the baghouse, but of the additional scrubbing system and the improvements to the NOx technology.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We'll let you take a break. Jyoti, there's a question from Camden for Clean Air. Why are incinerators begging to be shut down, and why are you proceeding?
So I just want to frame this question a little bit better. One of the things that we're missing in this whole conversation is the amount of waste that we generate as a people, as a society. We need to have some ways to manage the waste. And do we need more food waste diversion? Absolutely. Do we need more recycling? Absolutely. But the truth is we don't have that infrastructure in place right now. We have laws and regulations that are being developed to put those systems in place, and we're looking forward to that. And in the meantime, while that's happening, we do have waste that needs to be managed on a daily basis. So when I showed you the waste hierarchies, you could see that across the world, in the US, in Europe, and the United Nations as well, they all agree that waste to energy, which is incineration with energy recovery, is a better option than landfilling. Currently, we're sending 250 million tons of waste, which I shared in the presentation, to landfills. And you know, that landfill is in somebody's backyard as well, and that's creating an impact as well, right? So we need to, this is a complex situation. However, when you look to Europe, you can see that almost 20 years ago, they had put a landfill tax in place so that the waste would not get diverted to landfills, and it would get diverted from landfills towards waste to energy facilities, to start taking it out, to move it one step up that ladder. And from there, then you can move it further up. But the first thing is for it to get out and not even go to a landfill, because when it gets to a landfill, you're going to get much more harmful impacts than you get from waste to energy. So as far as answering the question about, why are waste to energy facilities being closed down? There are some new ones that are coming up in Europe. There are some that are shutting down in Europe as well. However, those countries have worked hard for a couple of decades now to get to where they are now. And there's still new facilities coming up, which means there are new non-recyclables that need to be taken care of. So all in all, it is very clear that waste to energy has a role to play in the way we use materials and the way we generate waste today.
Thank you very much for that answer. I see that Mr. O'Malley has his hand up. We're going to take him off mute in just a second. But before we do, Todd, can you answer Mike Morgan's question? Is Covanta applying for a temporary or permanent permit for burning liquid waste?
All right, and thank you for the question, Mr. Morgan. So Covanta Camden for this facility is applying for a permanent permit change to process the liquid waste. At the Warren facility, we did do a temporary permit, has an R&D project, which we're changing to a permanent permit requirement. But at Camden, it will just be a permanent requirement because we've already done the R&D at the Warren facility.
Okay, thank you. And I believe, Mr. O'Malley, you've been unmuted. So do you want to give comments?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me.
We can, sir.
Excellent. So just this isn't a public hearing, but just to state clearly my name, it's Doug O'Malley. I serve as the director of Environment New Jersey. And we've weighed in multiple decades on Covanta's Title V air permit. I did miss some of the earlier parts, earlier testimony. I did hear Reverend Jones. As you can see in the chat, I've listed kind of some of the questions. Some of the questions which I'll get to, but I guess I did just want to start off just by saying that Covanta, by holding this hearing, is kind of framing itself as a good neighbor. And kind of what I've heard, even just over the last several minutes, kind of dispels that assertion. And I just wanted to focus in specifically on the bag house question, because what I'm hearing directly is that this is a business decision that's being made to directly, essentially say we as a company at Covanta, we want to bring in more liquid waste. We're going to use that revenue to do the bag house. And if we can't do that, if we can't kind of include the amount of waste that we're burning, we're not going to go forward with the bag house technology. And so I just want to kind of take a moment to kind of, look at the analysis. This is clearly quid pro quo. This is a business decision that's being made, or at least that's how I'm perceiving it. And it does get to this point of, well, what is a good neighbor? And certainly a good neighbor would not say, well, only if we can burn more, we will put in better technology. Really, the point of the Clean Air Act, and this is not what this is not kind of a question of whether Covanta is a good neighbor or not. It's a question of the Clean Air Act and the Title V permits, and ultimately a question for the DEP, because Covanta should be using the best available technology. There have been efforts, and certainly, as all of you know and other community members know, to put in stronger technology at Covanta facilities like in Newark. But I think what Reverend Jones was hitting on this, and I'm sure others mentioned this as well. This is a question of the fact that this Covanta facility is the largest industrial polluter in the county, and it's no accident that it's based in Waterfront South. It was not welcome in Waterfront South when it came. I just want to kind of reframe the conversation here, because there's been discussion on outreach in Waterfront South. There's been discussion on the community service hours that have been spent. There's a direct monetary value placed on the benefits for Waterfront South neighborhoods of $50,000 to local nonprofits. But there does not seem to be that cost benefit analysis for the health impacts of the pollution that's dispersed from the Covanta facility. And so I really wanted to come in and focus on that. The second question I had, or which I listed first in the chat, is on the need for a cumulative impact study. I didn't hear a commitment to actually have that be done, to have it be shared publicly, and also inform DEP of the fact, inform DEP of those results as part of the permit process. And the third question I want to come back to is, obviously we are in a position of having the environmental justice law, which has now been passed, and environmental justice rules that have been proposed by DEP and hopefully will be adopted shortly. A good neighbor would obviously be supporting those rules and would not have opposed them. And so I also wanted to kind of ask clearly whether Covanta was lobbying against the environmental justice law when it was being proposed, and is Covanta still lobbying against the environmental justice regulations that are under consideration at this moment by DEP. I have more questions, but let's stop there, because those are three very direct questions that I would strongly want to hear directly from the company.
And you're also out of time anyway, so
perfect. Good timing. Good timing.
Stop there. So, Trish, can you address Mr. O'Malley's questions regarding the environmental justice process and give some clarity there?
Yes, yeah. So again, until the actual environmental justice law is implemented, which I believe maybe towards the end of this year, the DEP had issued the administrative order, AO 25, we call it. Again, just for those of you that are not aware, there are procedures and requirements on following that administrative order when you have permits pending with the DEP. Again, our permits are subject to that administrative order. And again, there are specific notification requirements, again, working with the New Jersey DEP on all of it. So, again, you need to be aware that this is a part of the permit requirement, that the recording of the hearing will be available. It will be submitted to DEP as part of the permit package, as well as we'll be issuing a response to comments document. So all the written, verbal comments will be addressed in that document, which will also be submitted to New Jersey DEP and will be available for everyone to view, to look at. That is posted on the New Jersey DEP's environmental justice website once that document is submitted. So again, this is separate from the New Jersey DEP public hearings that will be held should they issue draft permits.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Trish. Jack, could you weigh in just a little bit about Covanta's stance on the new environmental justice law and what Covanta's comments were with respect to that law?
Yeah, I can share some of that, Lee. So I guess in 2020, when environmental justice discussion starting came out from PA. Obviously there was a lot of discussion amongst all industries. I'll share the story with you that, I've been in about 25 years. And, I got a lot of comments from folks in the industry about, wow, this is going to deter jobs. It's going to cost employment. Costs are going to go higher. And there was a lot of discussion. And one of the folks said, Jack, you're kind of quiet. And he said, well, that's because we're supporting environmental justice. That's something, again, that, as Brittany mentioned, we had an environmental justice policy in 2011. So I believe we were the only company to support the environmental justice law. And we actually had someone, Paul Gilman, our former chief sustainability officer, went down to Trenton and testified in support of the regulation. So it's something that makes sense. Again, we've had this policy in place. We've done a lot of things as a company as far as transparency and equipment and communication, all kind of ties into what we're doing already.
Thanks, Jack. While I have you, just before we get to the cumulative impact study question, but I think you're the guy to answer this. It's a fairly lengthy question, but Sherry Brown asked, how much of that 2.5 million do you believe should be distributed to families who have been affected by the process of waste removal Covanta is proposing to use? What other techniques has Covanta tried to use to get rid of waste that does not require waste being burned? What eco-friendly techniques does Covanta plan to use in the next 5 to 20 years to get rid of waste? Why choose low-income communities to build your business in as opposed to buying and owning a large, spacious piece of land where people are not inhabited? And last question is, what is the end game? What is Covanta's end game in trying to partner with EPA or EJO?
Yeah, that is a long question, Lee.
Yeah, it is. It's at 7:46 in the Q&A.
Got it. Okay, so I guess the first part of the 2.5 million, I guess you're talking about the host fee and the fees that we pay to the city of Camden.
I believe so.
Sherry, I don't know, what percentage of that comes from the city of Camden to the communities, but what I do know is with our community benefits agreement, there's going to be a direct $50,000 that's going to the communities right outside the gate of our facility. And the community benefit agreement also continues to provide funds. I think one of the things that I don't know if we mentioned already that with the liquids revenue share, there's an opportunity once the liquids are in operation that fund would be increased to about $100,000 a year. So so I do know that money will definitely go into the communities right outside our gate. And keep in mind that is in addition to the normal outreach programs that we are doing with all of the volunteer hours that Brittany had mentioned earlier, in all the events and scholarships and things that we've been supporting around the entire city of Camden. So I know that amount, those dollars will definitely hit into the community. The question of, I guess, eco-friendly techniques. One of the things that Joe T talked about was the waste management hierarchy, right? And we're always trying to move up the hierarchy. So, keep in mind one of the stats that we have as a company, we've recycled 600,000 tons of metal. The Covanta Camden facility did about 16,000 tons of metal last year, both ferrous and non-ferrous. Remember that this is metal that is recovered heading onto a landfill or would have sat in there forever. So we're promoting recycling, composting, which is a higher level, it's desired on the waste management hierarchy. And I'll share with you one of the things that we were invited to participate in actually in 2021. Rutgers University approached us to do a composting study using aerated static pile technology for composting in an urban environment, basically on a waste to energy footprint, because our footprint isn't very big. So in conjunction with New Jersey Composting Council and Rutgers, we to a grant to do this study of urban composting. And unfortunately, we didn't get the grant. So we are still looking for opportunities with other organizations, especially the New Jersey Composting Council, looking for other opportunities where we can see if we can conduct that study. Again, as far as using this, we're looking specifically for the aerated static pile, because we also have to be very careful of odors. One of the things that composting does is odor generation, and obviously that's not what we want to do. So, we're looking for the right opportunities, again, to see what we can do and see if we can work with some composting technology.
Okay, and then I think there was one final question about what is Covanta's end game in trying to partner with EPA or EJO?
I'm not sure who EJO is, but
the Environmental Justice Office, I'm assuming.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, listen, this whole process that we're doing right now is, showing that we are trying to partner with our regulators. Having this meeting, is we're following the AO 25, but again, keep in mind that all of the stuff that we've been doing prior to this meeting, all of communications that I mentioned earlier, as far as some of these, meetings with these local communities, Waterfront South and Morgan Village, as well as, dissemination on the CCI meetings and the CCSD meetings. This is something we're kind of telling everybody about it, so everyone knows. And again, that's part of our policy, our environmental justice policy, to be transparent and make sure people understand, hey, what are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? And the benefits of what we're trying to do. So, we're continuously trying to partner with any organization and share our story with anyone who would like to have a conversation.
Thank you, Jack. Michael, I hadn't forgotten Mr. O'Malley's second question, which is also in the written Q&A piece, where he asked, you have said you have not done a cumulative impact study. Will you do so, share it with the public, and inform NJDEP of that fact in your public report to NJDEP?
Yeah, thank you. That's good question. And, one of the things we've been encouraging, and I certainly have been encouraging DEP to look at cumulative impacts, because it puts all of the health stressors that we face in communities, I think, in better perspective. One of the things that I think we need to talk through a little bit with the department is to figure out, well, what does that look like for a permit application where you're actually reducing impacts? I think that typically the goal of that is to assess increasing impacts and how does that add to a cumulative burden already within the community. So that's something we can go back and discuss with DEP, and how that particularly, if we were to do something like this, it's not specifically required, at least to our knowledge, for a facility that's reducing impacts to be completed. But certainly something that we can talk with the department about, and I'm willing to do that. What we do complete, though, which I think is important to sort of bring up, is that part of the permitting process, we have to look at, the dispersion modeling and actually figure out, okay, at permitted levels, and again, this is at the permitted levels that we're going to accept as part of the new permit, which has decreases in several of the permitted emission limits. We have to then look at what is the associated ground level impact of that, taking into account the background as it's currently measured at the NJDEP's local air quality monitoring stations, for example. And then we have to add our impact on top of that background. So in effect, you're using sort of the existing pollution as it exists today in a local community as sort of your benchmark for then what our facility is contributing. And then from that, it gives you a picture of what that cumulative impact looks like as it relates to National Ambient Air Quality Standard. But certainly something that I think is worth us having a conversation with NJDEP about, what are the things that we should be looking at as we're discussing this with the department to address your question, and we'll take that away from this.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Cheryl H. asked a question that's, you know what? I just realized we are actually longer than the allotted time frame. We were supposed to go until 8 o'clock, but I think that we're having good Q&A here. And so I'm going to impose on the panelists to stick around just a little longer and see if we can't answer more of these open questions. And so the first person I'm going to impose on is you, Todd. Cheryl H. asked, from the description of the testing that would take place at Covanta for liquid waste, it sounds like you would not be testing incoming tanks for heavy metals, but would rely on the supplier's own analytics of metal content and only require that if it was deemed likely that the particular source would include some metals. Am I understanding this accurately?
Thank you for the question, Short. Yeah, you are understanding that accurate, and your statement is correct. We would not be testing each individual load for metal. Testing for metals is something that's generally done in a laboratory setting, which we do not have here. Thanks, Lee.
You bet. So, Jack and Trish, there was a question about whether or not there were ads in Spanish or what we did in order to have things done for Spanish-speaking individuals. And I'm wondering if one or both of you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I can. I keep talking about our meeting that we had at Waterfront South on June 9th. You know, the advertisement and the flyer that was handed out door to door prior to the meeting, it was both in English and Spanish. And, you know, we also had someone available at the meeting that could speak Spanish as well. So, you know, we have the ability to do that, and we will continue it if that's necessary. You know, we have some folks that speak Spanish or translation companies as well if needed.
Okay, thank you, Jack. And there's also some written back and forth in the Trish, great. Trish, I think you're not on audio. Okay. Trish, we'll come back to you because it seems like you're having some technical problems. So we'll just, if I don't know who could answer this question, but Doug O'Malley asked, as a follow-up on the bag house question, what is the analysis for health impacts that Covanta's failure to include stronger bag house technology? Will Covanta provide a cost-benefit analysis in their permit on the inclusion of a bag house to include the health impacts for Camden residents, not just the cost of Covanta? And Mike, I think that might be for you. It's at 7:50, or Jack, you took off your mic, so.
Yeah, I think that's a question for Mike, if you're available, Mike.
Sorry, Lee, can I ask you to read the question again?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's getting late, I get it. As a follow-up on the bag house question, what is the analysis for health impacts that Covanta's failure to include stronger bag house technology? Will Covanta provide a cost-benefit analysis in their permit on the inclusion of a bag house to include the health impacts for the Camden residents, not just the cost to Covanta?
Right. So the human health risk assessment that we're completing is based off of the new bag house installation. So that's that's part of the permitting process, and that's what we're preparing as part of that permitting process.
Okay. Thank you. Trish, are you back online now?
I am, Lee.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my computer crashed. I'm sorry. Can you just repeat the question?
Sure. The question was generally around what Covanta was doing for outreach to Spanish speakers, and Jack had started answering that, and just thought that you could add some additional color to that.
Yeah, yes. So yeah, when I did submit notices in Spanish and English to the New Jersey DEP, which were both posted on their, again, the website I mentioned earlier, the Environmental Justice website. Unfortunately, I could not locate any. I did do an intensive search for a Spanish-speaking newspaper in the area. Was not able to find one that could publish the ad. Yeah, we did. It was on the DEP's website in English and Spanish.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anyone has, Mike, I'm going to pick on you for just a minute. Going up towards the top of the Q&A, David Pringle asked, you said that emissions are safe because they meet standards. What amount of particulates lead is healthy as an infant or a senior citizen to breathe in?
Right. Thanks, Simon. Thank you for the question, David. So I think that's exactly what the human health risk assessment process is designed to assess. It looks at what the permitted emissions are for a facility, and then goes through what the pathways are for that emission to actually make it into, human, whether it be from ingestion or inhalation, and then looks at the risks associated with that. So that's exactly the process that we go through when we do the human health risk assessment. And it's designed to go from not only what the emission is, but then actually what the human health impact is. Generally, when people in the public health world are concerned about lead, their primary concerns with lead are around ingestion, typically from contaminated soil, or perhaps even more importantly from lead paint in the homes. And so that's really, and also to add to that, drinking water. So if we look at typically what human health exposures are to lead, the primary concerns are ingestion from things like drinking water, lead paint, and contaminated soil. However, that is one of the impacts that gets assessed as part of the human health risk assessment that we completed.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking through the list. Most of these are now comments.
Hey, Lee, why don't you ask the question from Camden for Clean Air at 6:36 p.m. and I'll take that one.
Sure. If you're at 85% capacity, which is what the DEP data shows, and the amount of waste you want to burn is just 5% of your capacity, why would you be turning away any waste so that there's only a small increase in trucks? You have the capacity to add this waste without turning away any trash. To help the community believe you, would you ask DEP for an enforceable permit condition reducing the allowed tonnage you can burn to no more than 90% of your current capacity, and whose trash will you be turning away?
Great. So thank you for the question from the Camden for Clean Air group. So this one's a little bit more tricky to answer. We currently process around 400,000 tons per year, and our permit limit at 451,000 tons per year, or 450,000 and 100 tons per year. When we install the bag house and do all the upgrades, the plant just don't run better. We don't have a higher availability and a little bit of a better operation. That will allow us to come up to that permitted level that we could burn. 25,000 ton of that trash were not displaced using the liquid waste because we felt the liquid waste had more benefit for us. So I guess we won't be asking for any permanent effect for 90% of our current capacity because our current capacity will be at the permit level. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And I just want to make sure that we get that off the books. And I see that we're over time. There is a question as to which Covanta speakers from tonight live in Camden. I'm wondering if anyone can answer that question. Jack?
Let me take that question because
Sure,
they're kind of my employees that are here. So none of the speakers that were on tonight actually live in Camden. Brittany, who is our community outreach meter, was originally from Camden, as long as our outreach meter, our manager, Alyssa Wilds. I do have a supervisor that lives in Camden and tipping force super that resides in Camden. Our supervisor, who the supervisor tonight, was down here in my office listening for a little bit, but he had to go take care of some of the plants. But no one's on the panel speaking resides in the city of Camden.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Mike, I think we've got a question for you here, as I'm guessing. Mr. Pringle had asked a question about, I have to find it, I apologize. I want to get to the right question. He said, I wanted to confirm I heard you correctly, that you just basically said that you might not install the bag house and upgrade the scrubber to decrease pollution unless you get to burn liquid waste and increase your pollution. That's really your definition of environmental justice. And I think you might just want to clarify what was actually said.
Sure. Now, thank you, Lee. So I think, just to clarify, we've submitted the application with LDI as part of the overall package that includes the bag house, the scrubber system, and the improvements to the NOx control. We were kind of encouraged to submit it all at once and in one application, both from the air side and the solid waste side. So if we were to make changes to that now, we would have to, pull back that application, resubmit the application. We would need to figure out what could be supported. And I'm not saying that it would be nothing, but we would have to reevaluate the whole project without that LDI source of revenue. That would also, I think, sort of throw off the rails a bit, sort of the community benefits agreement that we put in place with the community. So there's a lot of intricate pieces here that are all sort of working together. It's not one of those things that we can easily just separate that out and just assume that the whole project will stand as it is. So it would be something that would have to be revisited.
Okay, I appreciate that, Michael. We have a question from Quinn Demena. Where will the liquid waste be coming from, i.e. Camden County, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, or elsewhere? I don't know, Jack or Todd, if you could answer that.
Yeah, I could try that, and Todd could jump in if needed. So I think the liquids, again, you talk about proximity and transportation. So the liquids most likely from areas in New Jersey, probably south, maybe Delaware, Maryland, as well as coming from the west in Pennsylvania. So those type of areas which are proximate probably would come where the liquids would be from.
Okay, Jack, thank you. We are just about, I've extended the panelists' good nature, but I think maybe Trish, you might have an answer to one of the questions that says from Camden for Clean Air, if you'll be burning at your permitted level, that means the existing trash and liquid industrial waste, and that still only brings you to 90% capacity. So you're admitting you're lying and won't be turning away any of the trash you currently accept, and that there will be a more significant increase in trucks. We're getting to the point of argumentative, but if you could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I can say that, when we did our truck traffic analysis, we based it on our full throughput limit of waste, which would include MSW plus liquids up to the existing permitted limit of 451,000 tons. So again, that truck impact is based on if we were burning as much as we are allowed to burn. So I'm not really sure what the 90% comment means, but that was how it was done.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm not entirely sure either. We have a question from Mr. Pringle at 824, where he asks, will you inform DEP that this hearing was not bilingual, even though there are OBCs in the immediate area of the incinerator that fit the definition of OBC due to language barrier? And Trish, if I'm not mistaken, this entire recording will be part of the record that will go to DEP, correct?
Yes, the recording as well as the official response to comments document. And again, I know there were some comments about Spanish-speaking residents. Again, while we don't have translators on this call, you can certainly submit comments in Spanish, again, by the means listed on the screen here, by email or mailed to the facility. And we can get those answered. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So unfortunately, we are over time, and I want to thank all of the people who gave us thoughtful commentary for all of the questioning, and I really do appreciate everything. We will, I guess we've got time for one more question. I'm being told the question came up as to why there was no community benefits agreement previously. I'm not sure, Todd, you popped up, so I guess you can answer that one.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer a couple of the questions about the community benefit agreement that were asked. So we've always had an extensive community outreach program here. As Brittany said, donating both volunteering our time, our employee time. We pay our employees to go out and volunteer in the community and providing resources within the community. As we undertake this project, we felt it was important to have a community benefit agreement in writing that really solidifies our commitment to the community and be transparent. The community benefit agreements and the funding associated with that are going to go above and beyond what we have been doing here for community outreach. One of the things about how the fund from the community benefit agreement will be funded, we are using a third party to control the funds. Any cost associated with that, Covanta is paying above and beyond the cost that we're donating into there. There's a 7-member board that will control where the money comes based on recommendations and application processes. We are still working on the bylaws in that committee, of the 7-committee board. I don't want to say exactly who they are because at the top of my head, I don't know, but I think we can provide more information on that. If anybody wants to reach out to me directly or to Alyssa Wilder, community outreach me, we'd be happy to share the community benefit agreement with you.
Thank you, Todd. I see while we were answering the Q&A, we are really out of time, but there is one last individual with their hand up, and I do want to give them a chance to speak. So with that, I would ask that we unmute the speaker labeled Camden for Clean Air. If you could identify yourself for the hearing, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. My name is Mike Ewall with Energy Justice Network in Camden for Clean Air. I just wanted to clarify what the confusion seems to be about you saying that you're not going to have an increase in trucks. You've been saying that you won't have that you will be taking waste in addition to what you're taking. In other words, you're going to be turning away waste that you're currently taking to make space for this liquid industrial waste. But what I just heard is that the truck analysis was based on you being at full capacity at the 450,000 tons per year, but you're not at that capacity. Based on the data you're reporting to New Jersey DEP, you're operating around 85% capacity, and you want to take enough liquid waste trucks to account for about another 5%. So if that's true, what you're saying is that there will be an increase in trucks, and there could be more than just that 5%, because you could go up to whatever you're able to hit, 95 to 100% perhaps. So to tell people there's not going to be an increase in trucks is false. And I think you just need to be honest with people about that. You're playing games here, and it's not appreciated.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the comments, sir. And with that, we're going to close the webinar. I'm going to remind everyone, as you're looking at the thank you slide, there is a way for you to submit comments either via email with Camden Public Comments at covanta.com, or you can send it to the address there below, Camden County Energy Recovery Associates at 600 Morgan Boulevard. If you want to file comments, those are due on or before January 7th, and you can review the materials that we referenced here tonight at the websites listed above. So I thank everyone for the thoughtful comments and the thoughtful questions, and I wish you all a good night.